Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Not My Shop. I'm here with the inside completely torn apart because all I wanted to do was add a little bit of low end to the sound system that we installed in the last episode with this thing. Maybe the last episode. I've recorded like 3 episodes. None of them are edited yet. I have no idea when these are coming out. But the door speakers, the Polk door speakers, are fantastic. They sound great, but there's no low end. And while I don't think a huge bass is absolutely necessary, I would like to at least hear the 50% of the music that exists below 200 hertz. So I added an amplifier and a subwoofer, and it was very straightforward and simple and absolutely did not involve making a huge mess all over the floor consisting of 90% of my car's interior. Might have been lying about the last part. But we're midway done. I just finished testing it, so I thought I'd show what I did now that I have figured out what I'm doing. And so instead of a video where I spend 30 minutes struggling, we're gonna have a video that's about 10 minutes of me just showing you what I did, and hopefully that makes it a little bit more coherent. So as you can probably tell by the big pile of parts over there, a significant portion of the inside's interior has to come apart to do this. And there's a few reasons why. Now, I kind of did this what I thought would be the easy way. I'm not entirely sure it's the easy way. Typically what you would do is you'd connect a power wire to the 12 volt, the battery underneath the hood, and run that back to your amplifier and your subwoofer. And then you would take a blue wire, usually the remote turn-on wire from your head unit, and run that back to the subwoofer. Thing is, that isn't really designed to run an amplifier, that Continental head unit, so it doesn't have the blue wire, and this is a hybrid. There's already 12 volts back here. So I thought, hey, why don't I just tap into the hybrid system? Now, that sounds scary, because it is. But we did manage to get it done. So first off, the stuff I'm using, this is a Kicker monoblock 300 watt little amplifier. I've had this thing for years. It's come with me through like 4 or 5 cars at this point. Little powerhouse, I absolutely love it. This thing I've probably had since I was 16. It's from the 90s. This is an absolutely hashed 10-inch. I mean, there's silicon on the surround. It's in this little sealed box, but hey, it'll work fine for our purposes. And I have a wiring kit from Walmart. I think I have the packaging around here somewhere. Yes, I got this Metra amp kit. These have gotten better over the years. These used to be trash, but this one was actually fairly impressive because it's pretty flexible. The wire is fairly flexible. The insulation is not super thick. Like on a lot of these, it'll say that it's 8 gauge or whatever, but then the actual wire in there, like the insulation is so thick that it's actually like 10 gauge or 12 gauge or some nonsense like that. Same thing with the remote turn-on wire. Some of these are absolutely ridiculous. Like, again, the insulation will be super thick and there's only like 3 strands of wire in there and you can't crimp or anything to them. That's actually half decent. So I'm going to keep the leftovers here because, well, they're actually worth a crap. So, for the amplifier, of course, we just grounded it to a screw into the chassis, same ground that everything else uses. For power, I ran power line through this part of the IMA box because it is kind of chamfered beveled here and it's not going to abrade through the wire, and that runs over to the DC to DC converter. I undid 3 10mm screws here so that I can move this fan out of the way so I can get to that lower lug there. The wire will have like an orange cap on it. That is the 12 volt that goes straight to the battery up front. So if you tap into that, you're basically tapping into the battery. So then I have my wire with the fuse, which I'm probably just going to zip tie here, and that powers the amplifier. For the remote turn-on wire, I went through the same hole, went around that side of the IMA bay to this plug on the DC to DC converter. And that plug has a black wire with a white stripe, and you can see that I crimped on a connection there. That gets 12 volts as soon as the ignition is on and loses 12 volts as soon as you turn the ignition off. So that is a pretty decent turn-on wire. There is no slack to work with, so you're going to have to cut all the connections and put in splice like that, or use a vampire tap. But if you use a vampire tap, I hate you. I actually ended up using bullet connectors because they're DuPont style crimps and it's all I had at the moment. So once I did all that, the amp would come on with key power. Wonderful. The other thing I had to do was actually get audio back to it, which is also fun. And to do that, I removed everything in front of the IMA bay, basically. Just to do all this, all I had to take off was the cover covering all the hybrid electronics. To get to that stuff, I took off the tom mix bar and this big panel here that houses the rear speakers. Even if your Insight doesn't have rear speakers, it'll still have the wires back there, I believe. And then that's what's called a tom mix bar. It's a structural thing. Also exists to keep your groceries from beating you in the back of the head if you rear end somebody. So that just comes out with a whole slew of 10s, all along the top, all along the bottom. Pretty straightforward. And that gives you pretty unfettered access to stuff like the fuel pump. Honestly, I should have just taken that out when I was dealing with fuel pump stuff earlier. It would have made life a lot easier. Another thing people do is if they take the hybrid batteries out of these and convert it to just gas, they'll take all that stuff out and just kind of make a lower hatch floor, which is kind of nifty. But what I did, anyway, that kicker supports high-level RCA inputs. A lot of amps will have the low-level RCA inputs, like usual, and then they'll have a separate set of terminals for high-level inputs, which is your speaker level like this. So what I did was I crimped on some Honda motorcycle-style connectors here and crimped those to the RCAs. Again, pretty good quality RCAs here. The wire had plenty of meat inside there, good gauge, good to crimp too, big fan of it. Nice and flexible as well. And I made sure that I crimped these so that the polarity is the same between them. And I basically just did that by making sure that the orientation of the plug I was crimping on matched the orientation of the plug I was cutting off. And then I ran that along here. I did that by, fishing it under this black duct first and then undoing this bolt and the matching bolt there, and then just kind of slipping the wire under here so it goes outside the IMA box directly back to the amplifier. As far as settings in there, I turned the bass down 2 clicks, turned the fader up 1 from center, and left the treble where it was. And then for settings on the kicker itself, we have bass boost turned all the way down. The crossover is at about 90 hertz-ish, and that's not a hard cut. That's just where the slope starts. And the gain is, I don't know, I'd call that a 4. And just from my testing with this junk little subwoofer, that does an excellent job at filling in the low end. Because if you step back here, way back here, and you take a look at the Insight, gosh, I gotta go quite a ways back here. There you go. You will notice that it is shaped like a cone, and you're sitting kind of at the end of the cone, and the subwoofer is at the back of the cone. So you get a lot of room gain, and it results in pretty smooth bass response of these cars. Which is funny, because it's kind of a pile of junk little economy car that just rattles and road noises way down the road, and yet, entirely by accident, it's a pretty great place for bass. So I've got a big pile of stuff to reinstall into the car. That's all pretty straightforward. Oh, I forgot to mention, to get this out, you also have to take out the center console. That's just a Phillips head screw on either side, and then you pull forward, and out it comes. And then you can get to a bolt right there. All the bolts are the same, pretty much. There's maybe 1 or 2 bolts in this entire section of the car that are not identical. So, yeah, no worries about playing mix and match, putting it back together. Just grab your 10, grab your bit driver, and go to town, which is what I'm about to do. And I need to go find some more clips, because it turns out my new clips from Amazon are kind of fragile, and a few of my brand new clips broke while removing panels. Go figure. Things are coming back together, so I thought I'd kind of show what all it took to get to this point. There's 38 screws in total that I took off to get here, and some clips. A couple clips here, a couple screws here to take off this little panel. Oh no, there's 40. Screw here, should probably be a screw there. All these screws up here, all those along there, and 2 on top. And then up front, to get to the area behind the speakers here, and also to get to the fuel pump and stuff, you've got a whole bunch more screws here, as well as under there. And then in the middle, there is one in there, and the center console goes over that, so that'll get tucked down there. So what I'm going to do is see how quickly I can tighten all these down. They are all 10 millimeter, except for these that are a T30. So I'm gonna load this up with the T30, and we'll see how quickly I can get this done, because it is 2 in the morning, and I've work tomorrow, so let's get this finished. 3, 2, 1, go. Good start. Oh no, that's where this one went. It doesn't go down here. It went up here. I mean, I very clearly have some missing fasteners, because this car has been apart many times. We're gonna have to call that good, because I can't get this in there. I have to do these by hand. Oh well. That's like most of how you reassemble a Honda Insight or whatever. So we'll finish this back up, and I guess I'll show you the finished product. But I mean, it's pretty stealth. You can't see the amp down in there. They actually used to make a subwoofer box that went under there. It was pretty slick, but out of production for quite a while, so this'll do. All right, so real quick, we're gonna see what that torn up 10-inch subwoofer sounds like in this car. And I know this isn't gonna sound like much to you, especially through my crappy little lapel mic, but hey, I mean, if you'll, I'm gonna play the brief sound test from when I installed the door speakers, so you'll have something to compare to at least. This is the best sound system I have in any car that I own right now, which is baffling, because in total I am into this maybe $200. Well, okay, I already had the subwoofer and the amplifier, so call it $400 maybe, and it's a 2.1 system effectively. It's what you'd have in your home theater setup if you don't like gimmicks like surround sound nonsense. But wow. There's no crossovers going on here or anything. I just kind of fiddled with the fade, and I think I faded it back another 1 to the rear. It splits up everything perfectly. The subwoofer just fills in the bottom end without being super obtrusive, and that little 10 is able to dig deep. Like I mean, it's hashed, so I'm curious if it's just broken in the right ways to sound good, or if a new driver will sound even better. But wow, I am thrilled. I am so excited to drive into the suburbs for work tomorrow. I'm going to take the long way for sure. So, I suppose I should show you why I'm here instead of my normal shop. So the reason I'm here instead of my shop is, well, actually just because my shop is so full of garbage right now that I can't pull this car in, but also because I just prefer working on projects with someone else around. But I couldn't have come to a better place to work on this car because it is among friends and family, and more friends and family. And some of the nicest Hondas in the state here. We've got a Integra. All of these are just the epitome of an OEM plus modified car. Everything about them is just dream build spec. Super clean Alpine head units throughout, just more rare accessories than you can shake a stick at, I'm sure. And which one has the crazy audio build in it? Oh my god, like even, I'm sure this is probably obscenely rare, isn't it? This shade?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the...
I kind of figured because I've literally never seen anything like it before.
the window visor, the Japanese window visor.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and it's just casually this insane amp rack, and...
Which is just 2 amps.
Oh, that's sick.
So, yeah, that's late 90s stuff.
Man,
Cool.
Period correct even. Wow. And then it's got a cover for the wires over here? Or?
Yeah, end caps on either end as well. Those come off too, somehow. I have to pop those off, yeah.
Wow. That is so clean. I mean, your groceries are not going to fit quite as well, but...
Definitely not.
There's still somehow more room in here than my BMW. And then Civic, Accord lowered on. Those are Explorer wheels, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Ford Explorer wheels. There's an EG hatch over there slumbering. And then red Civic, just everything super tasteful. Slightly different levels of modification on each. Those seats look... It's so 90s, and yet not in like an overdone way. And oh man, the engine is... that's Todd. These are his cars, and he is the level of obsessive of going to the junkyard to collect OEM hardware because you cannot have non-factory fasteners in the engine bay of your Honda. But just look at all this. I don't even know enough about Hondas to really know exactly what all I'm looking at here, except that there's a lot of billet, there's a lot of powder coat, there's a lot of TIG weld. That's not neochrome. That's actually a lot better. I don't know what you call that, but it's pretty sick.
Actual titanium.
Actual titanium. Well, okay, yeah, lightweight valve or oil cover. Silicone heater hoses even? Jeez.
Yeah, I had to change all that stuff. This thing was built a long time ago, and I had to revamp it. So. And don't forget, repping local, dude, CSB on the battery. I don't know why they make the 51R like reversed. They put the sticker on the other side.
Oh.
Honda sticker.
Yeah.
So you got to do something with the front of it.
And over here, just casually, more silver. The two doors in EK, right? Or is that the?
It's EJ8 technically.
Yeah, so some EK coupes, and then everyone's least favorite Civic generation, but getting the same treatment, and I'm really curious to see where that goes. And then just all over the walls, all the Honda stuff. I love this one because it has a D-Series in it, just like mine. My first car, you don't have any examples of my first car here because you have nothing but coupes.
Oh yeah, your sedan.
I had a 97 or 98 sedan with a manual as my very first car. I paid $500 for it, and these days that would probably be worth $5,000 in the same shape.
I actually finally cleaned up the engine bay on this one, so
My gosh.
you can see all that factory zinc.
Yeah.
Still existing in there.
Yeah, all the zinc coated fasteners. What intake manifold is this? Because that's not what my car had.
Just the Y8.
Oh, okay. Mine was a Y7, so this has VTEC then. Yeah, there's the solenoid. Look at that.
EX, dog.
Nice.
Height of luxury.
Mine was the most base of base models. Still had AC though. Did have that.
Gotta have AC.
No cruise, but AC.
Gotta have cruise too.
Yeah, cruise is important. Oh, and bikes. There's also bikes. Mostly Hondas. There's a couple of Honda CM
185.
185 Twin Stars. This one more stock. This one getting a really clean white Cafe Racer look to match the really clean white Hondas that are elsewhere here. And then over there, what we were working on earlier, what he was working on, I was watching and pointing out all the ways that it was interesting, is a BMW, something that I'm familiar with. I mean, this is a little bit different than my E46, but yeah, R60, flat twin, just put the transmission back in. It's got some neat stuff like a period, well, not period, but an old Silent Hectic ignition box, and a very old Moto Gadget M unit from before they had the M unit blue and whatnot. So this is kind of a neat resto mod sort of thing going on here. The factory carbs are still chilling out. Those things are massive. I mean, they seem to be in good shape, though. This thing is super cool. When I went to the track day, there was a guy who showed up on a Cafe Racered one of these and actually took it out on track. The absolute hero. Just occurred to me, I never actually showed where the sub is here. It's nowhere. It cannot be found. So there's actually this sub storage unit that I only carry some like essentials in. Jacket, ice scraper, of course, jump pack, and subwoofer. You know, the things that you need. Also, there's a title in here for a GMC Sierra, but you'll find out about that later. Or maybe you already did. I don't know when I'm releasing this video. So there we go. That is digging into the hybrid system of a Insight in order to extract constant and switch 12 volt to install a subwoofer. Risking life and limb for bass. That's what we do, apparently. Thanks for watching.